I want to ask you some questions to get to know like your political position better. Is that cool?
Yeah, go for it.
What if you like pick a law? I'm sure that you can think of one that you have a strong disagreement with, like a moral disagreement with, like that law is immoral. Should you disobey that law?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm on the line of constitutional conservative, so the line of any law repugnant to the Constitution is not a law. I completely agree with it. That's my basic point of view.
I didn't ask if it disagreed with the Constitution. I asked if we can think of a law, even if it was in the Constitution, that you thought was immoral. Should you disobey that law?
Yes.
Good. I absolutely agree. Yeah. So, I mean, that's an important question because a lot of people would struggle with that. A lot of people wouldn't realize that what you just did is you put your own moral judgment above that of the law and the government. That's a powerful, important thing to realize. Like at the end of the day, your sense of morality and what is morally justified overrides what is law.
And a lot of that is what the founding of our country was supposed to be about. Now, it wasn't just taxation without representation. It was also freedom of morality and religion from government out of you, your property, your rights, your family, your entire life.
If you know that something is bad to do to somebody else, is it okay for you to try and get someone else to do it for you? So as long as it's not you doing it, it's okay? Or is it also bad if you pay or hire somebody else to do the bad thing for you?
It's also bad.
Okay. So that obviously the analogy there, and I agree with you totally, right? Like if it's immoral to hold somebody up in an alleyway to rob them, it's also immoral for you to hire somebody to do that for you, right?
You're talking about like the IRS as far as tax collections, yeah.
Well, that would be one of a billion examples, right? Where people basically use the government to do a bunch of terrible things to everybody around them, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I think then the next question's easy. Can people by voting give politicians the right to do things which none of the people voting have the right to do themselves?
Here's where we get into the fun part. As a basic premise on its own, I would say no. But then we get into the weeks-long philosophy on if you don't allow any of that, if there's no collective right that you can create or delegate, then how do you make a actual functioning society? So that's where we would get into on my end. Can you anarchy and volunteerism actually work without some kind of without the users, without being able to vote, without having a majority that can decide what happens to some level? How do you get that system to work?
I mean, I understand your fears with that stuff. They're very, very rational fears. Like, yeah, if we don't have this thing that has always existed and that we've always been taught is the just authority to right the wrongs and to protect us all, if we get rid of that, how the hell are we going to be safe? And how the hell is society going to be at all ordered? I understand. Believe me, I had all those same questions, years ago as well. But the question I asked, and I would love a really clear answer on it, is yes or no, can people by voting give politicians the right to do things that they don't themselves possess?
As a basic moral question, I would say no.
I mean, I agree, and I don't think anybody has ever made an argument opposite of that. Like, you can't give somebody else authority to do something that you don't have the authority yourself to do. That's pretty obvious and plain to see, right?
Yes.
And so obviously the implication of that is, we don't have the right to tax people. We don't have the right to regulate the people around us and what behaviors they can and can't do and what speech they can and can't say and what businesses they can and can't run and like all of these things. We don't have the right to do any of this stuff. And yet somehow people cast votes that somehow magically, invalidly, empower these politicians to do all those things that none of these people have the right to do. What do you think about that?
James, I agree. James has a couple of really fun books that focus on just that he's always promoting.
Which ones?
I don't even remember the names of them.
Do you remember, James?
What's the one about the magic voting system that you like so much? You were playing the audiobook of it.
Earlier today?
No, like a couple of years. You brought it up and you've played the audiobook on your stream.
Some of the audiobooks I've played are Frederick Bastiat, The Law. I've played today there was The Most Dangerous Superstition. Those are like my two always go to. Sometimes I talk about Lysander Spooner, the Constitution of No Treason, or the Constitution of No Authority. I'm not sure. Is it one of those?
I think Greatest Superstition probably is the one that's closest to what Patrick's talking about right now, as far as not being able to vote power to a group that you didn't have as an individual.
You know what? There's also one that's kind of a Christian pacifist type perspective. Leo Tolstoy. What was that book called? Tolstoy. The Kingdom of God is Within You. And that talks about like war and, if it's not okay for one man to kill one man, and it's not okay if, two of us decide that we want to go kill this guy, that it's okay. It's not okay if 100 of us or 1,000 of us. So how many men does it take to turn an immoral act into a moral act? But
well, I mean that was kind of that was kind of my next question.
Ahead.
I was going to ask him like, and these are all like super basic questions, so none of this has got you. I have agreed with everything you said so far.
Well, I know where this argument's going. It's just it gets really deep when you're actually trying to figure it out on a level that's going to work out versus a level of what's pie in the sky ideology. This whole conversation gets real deep real fast.
I hate the pie in the sky stuff. It's so detached from like basic understandings of morality and relationships. And that's not at all what I'm about. Like, these are all really straightforward questions, right? Like, here's another one. Do you believe that right and wrong apply the same to everybody? Like, if it's wrong for me to murder, is it also wrong for you to murder? And is it also wrong for a soldier to murder or a politician to murder?
Yes, but that's where we run into problems with applying an anarchy system worldwide, is because there's other culture groups out there who have very, very different ideas of what's right and wrong than we do. So we can agree, whatever the Christian Western society, on what's right and wrong very closely. There's small levels of stuff where we disagree. Stuff like abortion, where is abortion murder or is abortion a right, that kind of thing. But overall, our society is going to agree on the basic moral principles.
Well, I'm talking about what you believe, not what they believe in commie China or whatever. Like, you believe that it's just as wrong for you to murder somebody as for the poobah of China or the president of the United States. It's just murder is murder. It's wrong for everybody. Yeah, I mean, obviously, right?
Absolutely.
Is there any way, and this is kind of the same question, but is there any way in which you can change something that's immoral into something that is moral without changing the act? Like, is there any process or grand dance or, let's say, voting or anything that can make murder not murder or can turn murder into something moral without, like, actually changing the act in question? So, for example, like, I'm taking someone's life non-consensually without changing that what happened. Is there a way to change the moral judgment of it?
No, I guess the gray space in there would be what, the death penalty for murdering somebody else. But as a basic principle, no.
Yeah. So this is kind of the same thing as the first question, but I mean, is it ever good to break the law?
Good to break? If the law is immoral and unjust, yes, it's good to break the law.
Oh God. You know, like, this is such basic stuff, right? But when I hear other people answer these questions with like the obvious answers, it gets me so pumped. I love seeing people, because most people wouldn't answer the way that you're answering, man. Most people would like put the just authority in the hands of whatever the law is, and like, if the law says it's okay, then it's not good to break the law ever. Like, it's just good to see people thinking for themselves. So I'm glad that's you.
I'm pretty educated. I've been involved in politics and ideology since I was in like fucking 5th grade. We're not far apart on all of it. It really is just, I've never seen an anarchist come up with a system in real life today that could actually survive, thrive, and even make itself prove to be so superior that other people would start copying it or wanting to join it. That's the point of separation between me being a limited government constitutionalist, really enthralled with what the founding fathers were trying to do on 75%, versus a straight up anarchist.
No, I got you. I mean, I was there my whole first half of my life. Believe me, like, I understand what you're saying, and I understand your fears. Okay, last of my stupid weird questions, and then maybe we can talk about your system, right? So the last question I really have for you is, do you think it's okay for government to force you to fund things that you are morally opposed to?
No.
I mean, I agree. Would you try and force me to fund something I was morally against?
No.
Of course not. And I would never force you to fund something that you were morally opposed to. No, even if we disagreed, I would not force you. I would afford you the respect of not forcing you to pay for things that you don't want. So
that's where we get into the fun part of things. Like, the easiest discussion on that would be paying for the military, right? So if nobody pays for military, let's say if we're talking hundreds or thousands of years ago, people collectively versus independently. Independently, you could have your neighbors have muskets, pitchforks, swords, whatever, and you might be able to survive. But now in the age of high-tech shit, if the other country has a whole bunch of high-tech shit and just wants to fucking kill all of you, and all you've got is rifles, because working independently, that's all you can afford. You can't afford to fly F-15s unless you've got one hell of a group of volunteerists. How does your society survive versus the hostile world out there?
Well, I just want to make sure, because it sounds like you walked it back a little bit. Let's say I disagreed with funding the military. Would you force me to fund it?
I would not want to, no. But I also I need to see a system where we can make that work without everybody getting their butts kicked.
Let's say
it's not a fear thing. It's just an analysis of history.
I'm about to spend time answering these practical questions that you have. I just want to make sure, like, morals come before practicalities. And so I want to make sure that we're clear on the morals. And it sounds like we are. Like, you would not force me, even if I didn't have a practical answer for you on how the military would, how collective self-defense would work absent government. Even if I said I don't have any idea, I don't have an answer, would you then force me to fund your conception of collective defense, or would you leave me alone?
I would leave you alone.
HBO Matt, you're an anarchist. Welcome to the club. Now let's talk about practicalities.